Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And as we're moving away from the July 4th festivities, um, one fact that's a little disturbing is that only 39% of Americans are proud of being American. What does that instill in you, Dr.
Yeah,
Lopkin?
that it's a very disappointing number, but I'm not sure it should surprise anybody because we have had decades of higher education and K through 12 telling our kids this is a racist country. This is terror. It's built on
And also
racism.
Hollywood. Let's be
Uh,
clear too. I'm not
Yes.
dismissing what you just said. 100% correct, Dr. Lopkin. But it's also broader than that. That's the key. I got it. That's a sweet zone. But it's also the media, corporations, entertainment. Kids are surrounded. By the time they're 15 or
Yeah,
20, they think this is worse than Nazi Germany.
people are bombarded with the idea that, oh, this is a terrible country and it's based on racism, and unless you're a white male it's against you, and which is certainly not the truth.
Although
There's a
white males have the highest suicide rate
yeah,
now of any ethnic group. Little known fact because it's not convenient, is it? It's an inconvenient truth, to quote Al
yes.
Gore.
And in fact, I'm forgetting the name of it, but there is actually a book coming out tomorrow, I believe, that talks about how the media, and this was written by a media insider, how the media has abandoned their job of telling the truth and instead is pushing this narrative that this is a terrible country. So when you're bombarded with the idea, whether it's education, media, over and over again with cancel culture, God forbid anybody should stand up for the country. They were canceled for a long time. It shouldn't surprise anybody that people are saying, no, I'm not proud. Now, whether that means they're not proud of the country because they've fallen for all of this and they actually believe it's racist, or they're not proud of the country because we've put up with this bull crap for so long, that wasn't actually gotten into in the poll. So it could be a
I
split
think
of
it's a
both.
50-50 split. I think
Yeah.
people have had it. I think it's almost 60-40. I think, and it shows up in elections. People have had it with the woke, entitled bullshit. That's exactly what it is. People
Yes.
want to put food on their plates. Most people don't believe any of this crap. Even you're talking about sixth graders, whatever. They don't. They don't care. They know it's a bunch of crap. And it's also, I think it's starting to wane. You see that in the West Virginia
It is.
election of last year. You see it all over. And you see it with our best friend, the congressperson from Minnesota, don't you? What happened over the weekend,
Yes.
Dr. Love?
Ilian Omar
The anti
went
Semite. The
Yes,
anti
went
Semite,
went
yes.
home to Minnesota to appear at a Somali music festival, and the crowd booed her off the stage. They actually were There's a video of them yelling, "Get the F out of here." This is her home state, and it was
With her home people.
with her home people. And this was not, a couple of people. This was the majority of the crowd. They've had it with her, and
Do you
they've
think she
had
could
it with the
maybe
woke.
not reappear in Congress? Do you
I
think it's
hope
that deep?
I hope that's
Well,
the
I hope too.
case. I Honestly, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that she may not be able to win another term.
Oh,
And
damn.
that
I'm going to have to go to therapy, Dr.
yeah,
Lopkin. I'm going to have to
that
get a
would
therapy dog.
actually be crucial to stopping the squad, is getting these
Excellent.
people out.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I think you talk about Somalians, they're probably hardworking people. Came over here very recently. They probably own liquor stores, small business people, and she just turned her back on them, and they don't buy any of this shit. That's my honest
Yes.
opinion.
No, you're right
And
on the money on that.
speaking of to be done with political figures. We have the mayor of Philadelphia, who says he goes to bed every night hoping his term is over. If I can do anything, even though I live in Connecticut, I did live in Philly at one time, to make that, to expedite that thought process, to send me a postcard, I'll do anything I can possibly do.
Yeah, he has actually united the city. Republicans and Democrats are now calling for him to resign
He should. He's an
because
idiot.
if he's just throwing in the towel into this mess that the liberals made, he needs to get out of there.
Well, I went to Philly, I told you a couple weeks ago, and it is like, woke city with, yeah, it's a woke city with all of its accoutrements, and in terms of drug abuse, high crime. And, about 10 years ago, Philly was a happening city. I'm not talking just socially. It was hot economically. Companies were moving there, and this shit had disrailed that with his wokeness and insanity.
Yeah, and I mean, this weekend was the perfect example of what is going on in with this woke agenda between Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and Highland Park. We had over 100 shootings in just those four locations over the 4th of July weekend.
Well, God bless America. And one of the leaders is Lori Lightfoot, which I believe she's a lawyer, but I'd have to say she should be on a show, Ripley's Believe It or Not, because I don't know how she got out of high school. She is not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. She basically said that the abortion decision with the Supreme Court is the first step, and now it's going to go against the gay and LGBTQ community, and she actually called a call for insurrection, basically a call for violence. In a city that's already Dodge City already, you don't really need to put any fuel on this fire, do you?
And what's really funny is that she made these comments, I believe, 2 or 3 days ago. And yesterday, she came out calling for peace,
for unity,
saying, yes, even though we may not agree, we have to come together and accept that there are differences in opinions, right after calling for insurrection. I mean, I'm not sure if she's schizophrenic or what's going on there.
Who knows? You know something?
But
it would take a team of highly trained psychiatrists, not psychologists, to get her MO, because she's one effed up individual, and basically took a city. When I used to travel there on business, something I was proud of, when you had international constituents, going to these conventions, and it was called, believe it or not, the city that works. Remember that, Dr.
Yes.
Lotkin? And now it's the city of the OK Corral.
Yeah, no, these cities have fallen apart. Their leadership have no idea of what to do about it. And that's why the mayor of Philadelphia is saying, I can't wait for my term to be over, because he has no idea how to fix the problem, despite the fact that Rudy Giuliani, back in the 90s, when he was mayor of New York, actually put forth a blueprint that all of these mayors could be following, but they absolutely refuse because it means actually arresting people that commit crimes.
Well, yeah, and it goes against the woke agenda. Like I said,
Yes.
I was in Philly a couple weeks ago. It's still a great, fun city, no question about it. But, it was not for the squeamish in some sections, like, just people dead. I don't know if they were dead or dying or on drug overdoses laying in the streets. It was quite a representation of the city of brotherly love. Speaking of love, we have not so much love in the Democratic Party for lunch pail Joe Biden. We have a senator who's being challenged now, Tim Ryan, typical Democratic piece of shit that says all this shit, but actually has voted 99% with the suicide agenda of Biden. But anyway, so lunch pail Scranton Joe is going to Ohio today as we speak, Wednesday the 6th, And Tim is, I think he's unplugging his toilet. He can't make it. He's
Yeah,
waiting for the plumber.
it is absolutely amazing how
Amazing.
Democrats are fleeing from Biden.
Running for the
The
hills.
the
Running.
best one I saw, there was a congresswoman from Virginia, Democratic congresswoman, who was being interviewed on TV, and she was asked, will she campaign with Biden? And she went dead silent and then finally just said, I'll be doing my own campaigning.
Oh yes, it's like yeah, it's like campaigning with Kevorkian in a right to life meeting. It's like not the brightest move. Um, we talked about this over the last month about the inevitability of Trump. I'm increasingly thinking that's not the case. In a recent poll, he's leading Lunch Pail Joe by 3 points. And in that same poll, my cat Carl is leading Biden by 10. Also, you have Joe Rogan coming out and endorsing DeSantis. Shed a little light on this for our listeners, Dr. Lopkin, about, in my view, Trump is still a gorilla in the room, but he's not the 800-pound gorilla. He's going on Nutrislim, and now he's about a 300-pound gorilla.
Yeah, Trump's influence is starting to wane as more and more Republicans are walking this fine line between attracting Trump followers and not associating themselves with Trump himself. The problem is when Trump was in office, and even now, he has policies that are exactly what we need. However, people have realized he can't get out of the way of his own ego. He has turned on people who were supportive of him, but then
Look what
said,
he did to Pence. Pence was a loyal vice president, and he turned. You summed it up 100%. I heard this on another radio show. That basically he could have the greatest policy at 10 a.m. in the morning, and by 12 he would F it up.
exactly.
That's the policy. He started tweeting about, I saw Dr. Lotkin and, blah, 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 and the waitress at Denny's didn't serve my eggs the right way. He's just, and there is a Trump fatigue. And
I don't know about your conservative friends, but all of my conservative friends and associates want a change. So I don't think the polls are really as accurate as people think. What do you think, Dr. Lopkin?
Well, no, I think the poll that Trump would beat Biden by 3 points is accurate.
Oh no,
yes. But if you
my
put
cat would beat him by
right,
so
that's just it.
impressive.
If you actually put another candidate in there, you're going to see the other Republican candidates doing better. I think Trump still intends to run, but I don't think he's going to be able to get past the primaries. There are enough people that are going, no, the Democrats will be mobilized by a Trump ticket to keep him out of office, where they won't be as mobilized to support Joe Biden over virtually anybody else.
That is the point, Dr. Lopkin, 100%. DeSantis runs, and you'll have a complete lack of enthusiasm on the Democrats. The only way the Democrats win or come close if Numbnuts runs again. And I say numbnuts because we can have a debate till the cows come home how rigged the election was. I'm convinced there were idiosyncrasies about it, but it never should have been that close. And that's the end of that. He lost to a retard. End of story.
Yeah,
by the end of his campaign, he was unhinged.
No, he beat himself because he could not get out of the way of his own ego, and people were tired of it. And I honestly think the best thing that could happen to the Republican Party is that Elon Musk buys Twitter and Trump does not come back to the platform. Because realistically, Truth Social is another echo chamber. It's folks that are, Trump supporters, and there is a conservative bent to the folks on there that will support, anybody else. But you don't have the general public jumping at the bit to to get on Truth Social. So
No, he doesn't.
people won't hear him so much.
Yeah, here's what I think, and what do you think? I'd like your comment on this. I believe people need an excuse to go against Trump, and if the polls actually in New Hampshire, it's very premature. I get it. DeSantis beats Trump, I think, by 3 points. It's not really important. It's 2 or 3 points. But if, let's say, that did happen, I think it would be it would just be like the finger in the dike, and then it would give an excuse or a reason to go against Trump. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if another candidate, DeSantis, whoever it may be, gains momentum in the early caucuses and early primaries, it's going to snowball. People are going to see, oh, okay, we've got a viable candidate that can beat the Democrats that's not Donald Trump. We're going to jump on that.
Agreed. Now, you mentioned Jeff Bezos, and that's really interesting because Biden's coming out saying that the economy is working for the working class. And then, I mean, I'm sure, because he would probably say this, by the way, because he did say he was a professor at UPenn and graduated at the top of the class. None of that is actually true. But now he blames ma and pa gas stations, which, let me be clear, because in high school I worked at a gas station. Before I ever set foot in a college, I knew that a gas station, with no degree, that a gas station basically breaks even on gas. But he's a president of the United States. I was not the president of the United States. And he doesn't know that? He is just flailing at anything. And then he picks a fight with Bezos, who owns the Washington Post. I believe he's going to be getting it from all sides. It's like the levees in New Orleans. It's, during the hurricane. It's just about to break. I really do believe, not because the media, Jeff Bezos, and others have found Jesus. It's because they're looking at the Democrats and their own ass, so to speak, and knows if this guy's in there, it's over, dude.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos literally said that Biden's talk about the oil and gas companies shows that either he's misleading the public, and let's be clear, misleading is a nice way of saying lying out his ass. So he's either misleading the public or he's absolutely ignorant of the facts. Now,
and what would you say, Dr. No, before we go on, what would Dr. Lotkin's verdict be? Ignorant of the facts or a liar?
Honestly, I think it's a little from column A and a little from column B.
I would have to.
I think he's dumb as liar. Yeah, I think he's dumb as a doorknob and wouldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. So I think it's both.
I would agree, and that's just for our audience. This goes back 40 years ago almost. His first presidential run, he almost got thrown out of law school. He had this, and he also has this macho thing. I don't get it. He's not the most impressive guy, that way. But he's always like in your face, very angry. And this is when he was, I don't know, maybe 88 or something. He was saying, I graduated at the top of my class. I got 4 degrees. No, bottom of the class, 1 degree. Thank you, lunch pail Joe.
Yeah, no. He graduated in the top half of the bottom third. He just stops talking before he gets to that last part.
I would agree. Very good, very good. And let me ask you another question. When do you think he's going to have another press conference? Because I believe, given the trajectory of his cognitive skills, that could be must-see TV. His last one wasn't impressive. Probably almost caused the Ukrainian war, minor incursion. I don't think he's getting, given the fact that he has cards. Do you have a card that says, Dr. Lobkin, go into a room, look at your client, don't jump into the swimming pool at their house, sit on the seat. I mean,
that was absolutely horrifying that he needed that. And remember, he did just have a press conference overseas where he took questions and the media asked him tough questions, and he first just completely lied about the answer. The first answer to any question, he started saying how America was doing so much better in terms of inflation than other countries. He's saying
An
this.
exact lie.
Yeah, he's saying this in Europe, where almost every country in Europe has a lower inflation rate than we do. And then he completely changed the subject to avoid the questions that were being asked. Between Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post, we've seen it now with ABC and NBC, the broadcast networks. They've stopped covering for him. You still have CNN, MSNBC, covering for him.
MSNBC would cover for Batman.
And of course, you've got the ladies of The View that wouldn't know a fact if it bit them in their asses. But most of the media is starting to.
Do you think their listening audience should be under quarantine? The View. I mean, I would love to look at the combined IQ of that audience. Not exactly the people that are at NASA.
Yeah, you're not talking about Mensa candidates that watch The View or MSNBC for that matter. No. But you're really seeing the media go, wow, we backed the wrong horse. We have to save our credibility because they're all losing ratings right and left. So,
and MSNBC is unwatchable. It's not because I'm conservative. Joey Bear, whatever her name is, I forgot her name. Just everything's racist. It's almost like it's actually like a Saturday Night Live skit without trying to be funny. It's actually hysterical.
It really is. And I mean, ironically, MSNBC's saving grace in terms of liberals is the fact that CNN got even worse. If CNN actually gets their act together and starts reporting news again, MSNBC will be finished.
Well, yes, let's hope for that day. And by the way, there was a time, believe it or not, Ripley's Believe It or Not, once again, that MSNBC I actually watched. Something like 15 years ago. It wasn't bad at all. Well, I don't know what the heck happened, but it's pretty bad.
When they started out, they followed the same trajectory as CNN. When they started out, they were a legitimate news source, and they covered both sides of the news. And then little by little, they got more and more liberal. And that was when Fox went, well, you know what? We need to balance things out. And they started going a little more to the right to balance CNN and MSNBC. And they just kept going further and further to the left.
To the cliff, actually.
Like the Democratic Party has. And unless they come back to the center, both the party and the networks, they're going to have a hard time surviving over the next few years.
I would agree. Now, there was a Freudian slip from one of Biden's, I believe, economic advisors. Could you talk about that? Because it was a little troubling.
Yeah, this was actually a terrifying turn of a phrase. He said that Americans were going to have to put up with economic pain in order to preserve the liberal world order. Now, first of all, never use the term world order. I mean, if that's just a siren call to the tinfoil hat brigades to come out and, but now he's actually legitimized the right-wing wackos who have been saying, yes, it's all about a new world order. They want it to. He actually said liberal.
But he believes it too.
Order.
That's the real. But the real truth is he believes it.
So, and the fact of the matter is, nobody wants a liberal world order. We've seen what happens. Look at Venezuela. Yeah, smart people don't want it.
Okay, there you go. I like that.
Look at Venezuela. Venezuela is exactly the benchmark we should be looking at, because it at one point was the shining star of South America. It had so much potential. And then it went socialist, and look what happened. If they're going to try to preserve a liberal world order, anybody that goes along with it should take a good look at what's happened to Venezuela, because that's what's going to happen here.
Well, that's a very good point and should be, let's say, expounded on, because
it's not just that. It's also countries like Argentina back in the 60s, a very European country, economically doing very well. And the point of this, why do I mention this? Because people get the wrong attitude. It takes decades and centuries. No, those countries flipped on a dime, didn't they, Dr. Lopkin?
They did. And of course, the response to this argument is always, well, we're not talking about socialism like that. We're talking about socialism like what England has and what some of the countries in Europe has. And anybody who actually believes that argument should watch the Netflix series The Queen. This is historically accurate, and they show what happened back in I believe it was the 70s.
It was the 70s.
When we had to bail out the British economy because capitalism works and socialism doesn't, and they ran out of money.
Yes, and because of failed leaders in Great Britain, they had some issues after World War II financially, because that was not their fault, because it cost them greatly to fight that war. But they came out of the war with high technology at the pinnacle of jet development. The list can go on. Their auto industry was sound, but because of socialism, they pissed it all away. And now, let's be honest, they're a second-rate power. They're not the third world by any stretch, but no one. I don't think they could even attack Argentina anymore. Remember in the early '80s?
I do. The Falkland Islands.
I seriously doubt it.
I wouldn't go that far. I'm pretty sure they could, given the state of Argentina, I'm pretty sure they could still take Argentina.
Right. But they're not even England of 40 years ago. There's no way.
They're not, but in all fairness, neither are we, because our military is completely unprepared for actual warfare, because they've been focusing on the woke pronouns and making people feel comfortable and inclusion. It's like, no, a military's job is to be ready for war. And we decided, no, pronouns are more important than that.
And it's scary. We talk about turning on a dime. I saw some military expert was talking about America's military capabilities. And he didn't say, this is not America of 1946. What he said was, this is not America of 1991. That's shocking. I'm talking militarily.
Yes.
No. And give another 10 years of the trajectory, we're in deep doo-doo on that one. We did have the shooting in a suburb of Chicago. And I guess for me, the big takeaway, another tragedy, effed up person, basically, I'll be really crass about it. Someone like that should be immediately taken out and shot.
Well, I'm going to take a step back from that. He was known to the police because of a prior suicide attempt. So obviously, he had mental illness. They should have gotten treatment, but this was a complete failure. And, Congress has been yelling, and of course, the Democrats are yelling, we have to take away the guns and we have to make it harder to get guns. Illinois has some of the strictest gun control laws in the country. They have the red flag laws that Congress has been trying to pass nationally, and they all failed. They did not keep this kid from getting guns. Why? Because his parents vouched for him. And
Well, they should go to jail too.
yes, they should. They should be held responsible. And
I
you
mean,
know
how can you
how
not be responsible when your idiot son tried to commit suicide? He's probably mentally totally screwed up, and you vouch for him so you can get an
well, it's
AR-15.
it's more than that, because you know how every time there's a tragedy, the neighbors come out and go, "Oh, yeah, he was such a quiet boy. We never saw this coming." That's not the case here. The neighbors are coming out, the school system is coming out saying, "Yes, we saw this coming. This kid was neglected by his parents." The school system came out and said they used to have to routinely call his parents because the school had let out and he was still there. They had forgotten to pick him up. He was in a bad home life. He should have been removed from that home. Maybe if they had done that, none of this would have happened. But this is the perfect situation that shows this is not about adding more gun laws. This is about looking out for the well being of children before it gets to this point and actually enforcing the laws that are already on the books.
No, I agree with that, but it's never about that. Chris Murphy, Chucky Schumer, all the above, Blumenthal, they know that. If you do the math, you realize there was a law. If it was acted upon, enforced, whatever, it's not about but they're hell bent on getting rid of the Second Amendment.
You know what? I'm not completely sure they are hell-bent on getting rid of the Second Amendment. I think it's much crasser than that. I think to these politicians, this is nothing more than a fundraising issue. And they know they can't get rid of the Second Amendment, so they're going to rally people against it to raise funds and make more money for themselves and keep themselves in power.
I stand corrected, Dr. Lopkin. You are correct that it's just without gun control, Chris Murphy has got nothing. Nothing. Has he done anything for Connecticut? Has he done anything for the United States?
This is Chris
That's
Murphy's
his shtick.
one issue. He's been running on it since getting into the Senate. It's what got him into the Senate. And that's all he ever talks about. He has been completely useless to the people of Connecticut, as has Blumenthal, to be perfectly honest. But again, to expand that, most of Congress on both sides have been completely useless to their constituencies.
I will go a step further, not completely useless, detrimental. How does that sound? If you designed to destroy America, you could not have done a better job than the powers to be. Last thing I'd like to ask your opinion on is the abortion issue, Roe versus Wade. I thought it was going to be, well, I'm sure it's going to be still continue to be a lightning rod, but the due diligence on it is that it's pretty much neutral. I mean, more people do support abortion rights. I get it. But in terms of driving people to the polls, it's still fairly down on the list, especially when you have $5 gas. There could be brownouts. Who knows?
Yeah, the issues that are going to drive people to the polls are the kitchen table issues. It's the price of food. It's the price of gas. It's the inflation rate. It's the economy in general. Again, James Carville coined the phrase for Bill Clinton. It's the economy, stupid. It's still true. While there are people who are up in arms about abortion, the number of people who are up in arms on the pro-life side and the pro-choice side pretty much balance each other out. So that's
no question
not
about
going
it.
to be a deciding factor.
There is one final note that I'd like your opinion on. There is more than talk. The general consensus from economists is that the second quarter will be negative. Final thoughts. What does that do? It's only 120 days. before the midterms. I know there's another economic report after that, but I believe, here's what I think. If it's negative, then the third quarter is going to be negative too, because one kind of piles onto the next. I've never seen it when you have two in a row and all of a sudden by magic the third just magically appears positive. So I think that really sets up Biden for two things: a shellacking in the midterms and further abandonment of support, whatever he has in the Democratic constituency. And plus you're going to have the continuing night of the long knives. You're going to have Elizabeth Warren. You're going to have little Mayor Petey and others positioning himself. Newsom has already done that, taking out ads in Florida. Your thoughts? And the real focus is second quarter negative. What does that do?
Yeah, the last week in July is going to be a massive week for the Democrats and for the economy, because that week you have a Fed meeting where they're expected to raise interest rates possibly another 75 basis points, which again
is huge.
has, they just did that, and they haven't raised by that much in 30 years. So that comes, and then right on the heels of that, I believe actually either the day after the Fed announcement or 2 days after, is the first report for second quarter. So you're going to have interest rates are going to go up, and then we're going to find out whether or not we're already in a recession. If the second quarter is negative, it doesn't matter what issues the Democrats try to raise. That's it for them in November. If we hit recession before the election, it's game over. And
you are correct, Dr. Lopkin. No
and
question.
what makes it even more, that week more important is the fact that the interest rate hikes are designed to slow the economy. So if we get second quarter numbers and we're already in a recession, the Fed will have raised interest rates just 2 days earlier. That's going to push third quarter lower.
Third quarter. Going to guarantee a third quarter negative. Last question, Dr. Lopkin. Do the night of the long knives come out after that?
I think they're already out. I think the Democrats have already decided that they can't possibly let Biden run for a second term. And if he decides that he's running despite what they want, they're already planning on primarying them. Warren is planning on running. Newsom is planning on running. There was even some talk about AOC, which, I mean, that's ludicrous. She couldn't even get past the first couple of primaries.
Such an ego. I don't. Something, I wouldn't put it past her. And the other thing we talked about late night TV. She was on Colbert, and this bonehead, this upper elite piece of shit, is saying, "Oh, why don't you run for president?" Meanwhile, he's in his gated community, probably worth $100 million. What a disingenuous ass.
Yeah, Colbert is a moron. He's a shill. He's a shill for the left wing.
He's not a comedian.
No. And the fact of the matter is, he was on the verge of being fired when Trump won the presidency. Trump literally saved his job, and now he's just a left-wing shill. But I think it's hysterical that all of the people that are planning on primarying him so far are all further to the left than Biden is. They actually believe that the reason for Biden's low poll numbers is that he hasn't gone far enough to the left. And I can already see the attack ads on Gavin Newsom. Homelessness through the roof, crime through the roof, an economy that's falling apart. And
people
now
exiting.
Gavin Newsom And now Gavin Newsom wants to do to the United States what he did to California. I mean,
it's all about
delusional.
It's all about these people have huge egos, accomplishments 0, maybe 1, ego 35. Gavin Newsom is lucky he has his stupid shithead job in California. He was recalled. It didn't go through because he had like Billy Bob running against him. He would have 0.0. The only people that would vote for him would be the listening and viewing audience of The View.
Pretty much,
Because
yes.
they think he's hot. Because they think one of them said that he's hot.
Yeah, because that should be the deciding factor in a presidential election.
According to The View, it probably is, yes. Well, thank you, Dr. Lopkin.
Ridiculous.
Great show, and people can express their opinions or what they want us to talk about on the Exvadio website, can't they?
Yes, we'd love to hear from you. You can go to exvadio.com/connect. That's EXVADIO.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. And of course, you can hear every episode of Carnivore Bites at the Carnivore Radio website, the exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you next time.